Deputy President. Well, we know that the Labor Party has been waiting for their job skills talkfest before looking to do anything productive to address the skills shortage that is being faced across so many sectors across the entire country. This proposal to allow pensioners and those on the disability to support pension to work longer hours without impacting on their pension was proposed by this opposition, by the opposition leader, a substantial period of time, around the 26th of June, to start to put in train methods and ways that we could boost workforce shortages as quickly as possible. Now, this is actually the point. We've heard lots and lots of things being talked about increasing migration, increasing skilled and unskilled numbers, bringing people into the country, working on the visa processing system to get them through. And whilst much of that is commendable and needs to be done probably at a much faster rate to ensure that we can address these work skill shortages, both in skilled and unskilled positions, we have a workforce ready to go. We have a substantial number of people that are in receipt of an aged or disability support pension who would like to work more hours. But those opposite, now in government, have of course opposed this up until their talkfest. Up until the Job Skills Summit, it was something that would not be countenanced. Now, is that because it was proposed by those opposite? Is it because we have a level of pettiness that won't allow good ideas to be discussed, that this is a government who isn't going to govern for all Australians, is a government that's only interested in governing for their union mates? And so we needed to make sure that John Setka, Sally McManus and the majority of participants that were at the Job Skills Summit representing those unions would give this the tick of approval, because we couldn't have a situation at all where those in government upset their union mates. So just to be clear, when we talk about the unions currently represent around 10% of Australians, the private sector workforce, yet had 33 seats at this summit talkfest. So as Senator Reynolds just made the point, there was only 7 participants from Western Australia. The West Australians were completely overshadowed by the unions and how much say and what the influence was and the numbers they had representing them at this talkfest last week. Now, to put that in context, 10% of Australians members of unions. 41% of the Australian workforce is employed in small business. 41%. And guess how many seats they had at the table? Guess how many seats representing small business who employ 41% of Australians had at the table? 1. 1 seat. Now, those of us in this chamber are more than aware that the government has no interest in small business. They have every opportunity, whilst those on this side of the chamber were in government, did anything, proposed anything to boost small business. It was opposed. It was vehemently opposed at every single opportunity. But I guess what's even more important for those everyday Australians that are looking to what happens in this place, that is looking to what this place and the other place is doing to address cost of living pressures. What is impacting them? The ability for them to put groceries on the table, the ability for them to afford power bills, to currently warm their houses and very, very soon to start to cool their houses as we go into summer. What were the topics that were used around that and talked about at the Skills Job Talkfest? Nothing. Nothing. But easing workforce shortages would make a significant contribution to cost of living pressures. And we know this because cost of living pressures are significantly impacted at the moment due to supply chain issues. And it's the supply chain that is being so dramatically impacted. And there are costs around increased costs of fuel. We know that the war in Ukraine is having impacts, something that we completely understand, but when in opposition, those opposite denied had any factor whatsoever. But we do know supply chain is having a significant impact on cost of living pressures. And how do we start to make practical inroads into supply chain issues? We boost the workforce. And we need to do that today. We need to do that as soon as possible. And as I said, there is a workforce willing and able, ready to go, ready to do an extra shift, to do an extra day, to help the small businesses that so many of them, 41% of Australians, so many Australians are employed in. And they are available to go today. And so I commend Senator Dean Smith's bill, and we will continue to support it and make sure that these sorts of solutions, practical solutions, solutions that can be impacted quickly, enacted quickly to make a real difference, to help everyday Australian families, whether it's putting more money in their pockets or whether it's helping to ease the workplace shortages, to make sure that we are supporting everyday Australians. Now, what I find extraordinary as someone who sat on the Community Affairs Committee in the last term of Parliament was the volume of inquiries that we conducted. And because we understand the importance of looking at all legislative options, we understood the importance of making sure inquiries were held that would look at what solutions may be on the table. And whilst I would suggest more good ideas come from this side of the chamber, particularly when it's going to help small businesses, particularly when it's going to help working families, we did many, many inquiries. The fact that those opposite in these first 100 days of Parliament have gone out of their way to block an inquiry, to block looking at this as a solution. Now, this is a government who held themselves up as the soon-to-be bastions of transparency. They wanted to make sure that there was a new politics, there was an open exchange of ideas, that there was transparency in what they were going to put forward in a legislative agenda that is going to have a direct impact, not only on disability support pensioners, not only on age pensioners, but on all of those small businesses that employ 41% of Australians, the larger businesses that employ many, many more Australians that are able to then contribute more without having their pension impacted. So what do those opposite do? They block an inquiry. They absolutely said, no, we don't want to look at this. Now, is it because the unions told them not to? Is it because they can't look at any idea that's not their own? Is it because they don't care about cost of living pressures? Because we're yet to hear a word come out of so many opposites' mouths what they plan to do. They've planned for a plan, secret plan to fight inflation that's allegedly rumbling around, but there is no plan to ease cost of living pressures. We know that those opposite who spoke, I think it was around 94 times in the lead up to during the campaign, in the lead up to the election, that $275 was going to come off every Australian's power bill. Well, try and get them to say $275 now. Not one of those opposite will mention the figure, because as Australians are seeing day after day, quarter after quarter, their power bills are continuing to rise. So those opposite who promised Australians would be better off, how are they going to be better off? They're certainly not going to be $275 better off on their power bills. They're certainly not going to be better off when you object to moving towards allowing pensioners to increase their activity, increase their work, increase the hours, the contribution, the productivity that they can make to our economy. But when you refuse to look at that, you refuse to inquire into it, you refuse to look at any ideas that aren't your own, you are standing in the way of improving the life of everyday Australians. You are standing in the way of easing cost of living pressures. All those opposite are interested in is making sure that John Setka gets his payback for the ABCC, that we're going to make sure that we're going to increase costs on building sites, we're going to increase costs to everyday Australians who are trying to build their own homes. That's going to become more difficult because all of a sudden the Building Commission won't be there anymore. We're going to see union thuggery return. Well, not that it ever left, but we actually had the ABCC that could look into union thuggery. But we're going to get rid of that. We're going to see workplaces in building science become particularly unsafe, especially for women, because we know how many cases have been brought to the ABCC, and every single one of these cases meant additional costs to people building a home, to businesses developing property, all of that. Those cost of living pressures are just going to increase at a time when we do have housing issues, where we do need to be working towards getting more stock into the market, but that's not going to happen because the union mates have to be appeased. And so we are committed on this side to ensure that pensioners, disability support pensioners, are able to participate more fully, that they're able to boost their income, that they are able to continue to contribute to Australia's productivity, that small businesses are able to staff their business, so that restaurants are able to do a service, both lunch and dinner, because they can actually get the staff to work. These are the real impacts that are being felt. Retail businesses not able to get someone to work. Aged care homes that could be desperately keeping nurses and other aged care workers in the workforce, unable to bring them back just for one extra shift a week, because at the moment the damage, what they would receive in a reduction to their pension is going to have such an impact on their income that they are unable to do it. This is a simple solution. It is a fantastic